Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I felt it before I even saw the bus. Not the tires on asphalt, not the laughter of other kids packed inside like sardines, not the wind tugging at my hair. It was a pulse, a vibration that drummed through the soles of my feet, spiraled up my spine, and settled behind my teeth. It was low and constant, a chorus of voices too deep to understand but somehow coherent, almost melodic in its insistence. When I pressed my fingers to my temples, I could feel it sync with my own heartbeat, the rhythm of it whispering in tandem with the anxious thumping in my chest. My parents smiled at me, oblivious, as if they hadn't noticed that the world beneath, the gravel had already shifted. "Ready?" my mom asked. Her voice felt distant, warped by the hum. I wanted to nod. I wanted to run. I wanted to tell her I knew the bus was alive, that it was calling me, that it wanted me to get on. But instead, I shoved my suitcase forward and climbed the steps, each one vibrating beneath my feet. The door slammed behind me, sealing me inside. The other kids were loud, screaming at friends they already knew, slamming their bags against the walls. I slumped into a seat by the window, hugging my knees, trying to imagine a world where I belonged. That's when I noticed it. The hum grew louder near my head, as if leaning closer to listen. The voices weren't random. They were structured, attentive. It was as though the bus, or whatever pulsed beneath it, knew me, had always known me. Every shout from the other kids reverberated unnaturally, as though filtered through a lattice. I couldn't see. And then I understood in a way I shouldn't have that it wanted me to hear it, to feel it. I pressed my head against the glass, trying to drown it out with the blur of passing trees. But the pulse followed me, rippling through, the bus like water in a still pond. I realized my hands and feet weren't just shaking from nerves. They were trembling because something in the hum recognized me, beckoning me toward a place I wasn't ready to see. The others leaned over, asking questions I didn't answer, laughing at a joke I couldn't hear over the chorus behind my eyes. "Are you special?" one boy asked, tilting his head. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I could feel the eyes of the bus upon me, not just the other kids, but the vehicle itself, as if it had waited a long time for someone like me. When we arrived at the camp, the first thing I noticed was the trees. Not the piney smell or the dappled sunlight, but the way they leaned in, branches arched like spines, listening. I could swear I heard leaves shift in time with the pulse in my chest. The cabins slouched toward me, their windows dark and hollow like eyes observing, measuring, understanding. And the lake, God, the lake. It stretched beyond the tree line, flat and black, reflecting not the sky but the faintest shimmer of something else beneath the surface, as though the water itself was an eye, unblinking, waiting. The counselors greeted us with fake cheer, but I could feel their smiles twitch in unnatural ways, like masks stretched too tight over unknown faces. "Welcome to Camp Ridgetop," one said. The words were warm, but the pulse behind them was colder, resonating against my ribs. I noticed other campers staring at me or past me, toward a point just above my shoulder. Blank expressions on their faces, gazes fixed on something invisible. Each time the hum intensified, I realized I wasn't just being watched. I was being seen by the camp itself. The first nights were the worst. My cabin mates, 5 boys whose names I barely remembered, snored, fidgeted, and whispered secrets in the shadows. I lay awake, feeling the hum crawl into my ears, until it was a voice in my head forming words I wanted and feared. "You were sent here because they don't want you, but we do. Stay." I wanted to close my eyes, but closing them only made the pulse sharper, as if the camp pressed closer, pressing into me, into my chest, my skull, my very thoughts. It was during one of those restless nights that I first saw her, Inara. She was seated across the clearing from the cabin under a tree, hands folded in her lap. Her hair glimmered wet, though there was no rain. Her eyes were wide and unnerving, reflecting the lake's unnatural black sheen. and her smile was perfect, unmoving, carved in a line too precise to be human. I froze. She lifted her hand slightly, just a small motion, and I felt the pulse jump in response as though she had drawn it out of the earth itself. When she spoke, it was not with a question or greeting. "I've been waiting for you." Her voice didn't carry, yet I heard it in my skull as clearly as if it had been whispered in my ear. Every hair on my arms lifted. I wanted to scream, but the words caught somewhere between fear and awe. And, when she stood, her hands glimmered with a faint residue of silt or algae, like she had surfaced from the lake itself. My stomach sank. This wasn't a girl. This was something else. An echo. A fragment of the camp that had taken human form. The next day I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the mind. The hum intensified when I walked the campgrounds, weaving around me like a living thing, matching my steps, nudging my gaze toward Inara whenever she appeared. Others seemed not to notice her, not even the counselors. The camp had claimed her, as its own, just as it wanted to claim me. At lunch I avoided her eyes, but she caught mine anyway, and I felt my chest tighten with a longing I hated myself for. Even as terror rooted me in place, a part of me wanted to follow her. By midweek I was learning the rhythms of the camp. Meals were still terrible, cabins still oppressive, and the lake glimmered with that impossible blackness at all hours. The hum was a constant companion, growing stronger when I was alone, quieter when in a group, as if the camp's attention favored me specifically. I began to notice patterns, the way the trees leaned slightly when I approached, the way cabin doors would creak open moments before I reached them, the lake's surface rippling in perfect circles even when the wind was still. It was alive, and it knew I was listening. Then came her invitation. I was sitting at the edge of the dock during free time, watching the water consume the reflection of the sun, when she appeared at the far end. Her steps were silent, but the hum vibrated through me, faster now, more urgent. "Meet me at the lake tonight before lights out," she said, voice smooth and insidious. Not a question, a command, a promise. I didn't need to hesitate. My pulse matched the camp's hum, and somewhere deep inside me I craved the belonging it offered. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but the loneliness I had carried all my life, a hunger to be seen, to be wanted, was stronger than fear. My chest ached with both dread and anticipation. I nodded, whispered something inaudible even to myself, and my mind began spinning through the logistics of sneaking out. The boys in my cabin gave me tips, their casual cruelty only heightening my nerves. Every step toward the lake that night felt predestined, as if the camp had already pulled the path out from under my feet, guiding me forward. The walk through the trees was a tunnel of shifting shadows. Leaves whispered secrets just out of reach. Branches brushed my arms like skeletal fingers. I felt eyes in every hollow, every window, every reflected gleam of moonlight. And always, the hum, the camp's heartbeat, pulsed in perfect time with mine. My fingers trembled on the towel I carried, and I tried to remind myself that it was only a summer camp, a place my parents sent me, not a living thing. But the lake ahead glimmered blacker than the sky, and I felt the tug of something, infinite beneath its surface. When I reached the dock, she was already there. Inara's smile was precise and terrible. She held out her hand, wet, slick with algae, carrying the scent of mud and water and something else I couldn't name. "Come," she said, and the words slithered into my mind, weaving through my thoughts, dragging the pulse of the camp into every vein. I wanted to refuse, I wanted to run. But the hum, the trees, the lake, and her eyes were a chorus of insistence. They wanted me. I wanted them. We waded into the water together, the cold biting through my clothes and skin. It didn't repel me, it drew me in. The reflection staring back at me was wrong, eyes too deep, a smile too fixed. I blinked. She mirrored me. No, more than mirrored. The reflection moved with a delay, tugging at my sense of reality, teasing the line between me and her. I felt my body tense, lungs ready to panic, and somewhere behind it all the hum coalesced into words. "Stay. We see you. We know you. We want you." I tried to speak, but no words emerged. She didn't answer, just floated, perfectly poised, hand lightly skimming the water. The night stretched, and every second pulled me deeper into the lake, into the camp, into a space that wasn't fully physical and yet couldn't be escaped. I could feel my thoughts twisting, my desire to belong warping into something darker. Somewhere deep beneath the black water, I knew that surrendering, even partially, would change me forever. I don't remember leaving the dock that night. Part of me may have walked back to the cabin. Part of me may still be in the lake, in the pulse, in the hum. I only remember the wanting, a hunger that both terrified and thrilled me. And I remember her eyes staring at me from the water's surface, waiting, patient, inevitable. The second time I saw the lake that night, it wasn't just black. It was alive. Every ripple was precise, deliberate, as though the water itself breathed in anticipation of me. I stood at the edge of the dock, feet pressed against the splintered wood, staring at the perfect mirror it offered. And she was there, waiting, every detail the same, the impossibly flawless smile, hair glistening as though freshly submerged, hands slick with residue that smelled faintly of wet earth and algae. "Come," she said again, but this time the word didn't leave her lips. I heard it in my skull, whispered through the hum that had grown to a roar in my chest. I wanted to refuse. Part of me screamed to run, to bolt through the trees, to claw back to my cabin and lock myself in until morning. But another part, a darker, lonelier part, pulled me forward. The camp had recognized me, marked me as something it could mold, and the pulse of the lake, of the trees, of every cabin window staring at me whispered, "We see you. We want you." That part of me, the part that had always wanted to belong, wanted to surrender. We waded into the water together. The cold bit, but it didn't repel me. It wrapped around my limbs like velvet chains, anchoring me to the moment. And beneath the surface, the lake was whispering again. Not just a hum, but coherent thoughts in my own voice. "You were sent here because they don't want you. But we do. Stay. Stay and be whole. Stay and belong." My chest tightened. I wanted it to stop. I wanted to resist, and yet each word pressed on me like a hand, guiding me deeper into the black reflection beneath the water. Then she smiled. Or maybe it wasn't her. The face staring up from the rippling surface was mine. Exactly. Mine, but wrong. Her eyes were mine, but deeper, darker, holding a calm that I did not possess. The reflection moved differently, delaying slightly, tugging me into a rhythm I couldn't resist. And I realized suddenly, with a terror I could barely name, that the hand that pressed me downward, forcing my body to struggle, was not hers, it was mine. My own reflection, obeying a will that was both mine and not mine, dragging me toward oblivion. Panic flared through me like fire. My lungs screamed, my limbs flailed, but the water was patient, suffocating me with inevitability. Above, I expected Inara's face to hover, to give me some human comfort, but there was nothing. Only the reflection, perfectly smiling, unblinking, holding me hostage in my own body. And somewhere behind it all, the camp pulsed, the hum vibrating in time with my heart, as if it were whispering, "You belong. All of you, every part of you. Stay and become ours." I fought to the surface, coughing, spluttering, and for a brief second saw her, Inara, crying on the dock. Not human crying, not fully. Something fractured and unreal. She mouthed the words, "I had to." But I knew now it wasn't an apology. It was a transaction. She had been a part of this camp, absorbed into it, and now I was being offered as a replacement. The hum pulsed in my ears, louder than my heartbeat, louder than my frantic gasps. "We see you. We want you. We need you." I pulled myself out of the water, drenched and shaking, and the dock seemed impossibly long, stretching like a spine into the lake. Every plank beneath my hands quivered. My reflection flickered in the water. a smile appearing and disappearing, just at the edge of my vision. I turned, running blindly toward the trees, hearing the hum chase me like a living thing, wrapping itself around my legs, tugging me back toward the dock, toward the black water, toward belonging I did not want. When I finally burst into the cabin area, I was shaking uncontrollably. The counselors arrived almost instantly, their expressions confused, almost rehearsed. "Are you okay?" one asked, but the words lacked weight, as though filtered through layers of something ancient. I choked out that I had been pushed, that Inara, her name trembling on my lips, was involved. The counselors exchanged glances, frowning. "I don't remember signing her in," one said quietly, almost to himself. Police were called. Statements were taken. But no one, not a single camper or counselor, remembered seeing Inara at all. No sign of her appeared in the cabin records. The boys in my cabin had no memory of her. The dock was empty when they checked. And the lake? The lake was black and smooth, as though nothing had disturbed it, as though it had never waited, as though it had never lured me there. My parents picked me up the next day. My mother scolded the camp head and my father muttered things about freak accidents. But I sat silent, afraid to tell them the truth, that the camp was alive, that Inara had been a mask, that the hum and pulse and pull were still inside me, echoing beneath my skin. The ride home was quiet, the car filled with tension and the faint echo of a memory I couldn't fully trust. When I looked out the window, I saw the lake in my mind's eye, and I felt the tug, just faint enough to make my stomach tighten. At home. I avoided mirrors for weeks. When I did catch a reflection, I saw the briefest flicker of her smile, Inara's perfect ancient smile, crossing my own. Sometimes when I'm alone, I hear the hum again, low and insistent, a chorus of voices beneath the surface of things, and I realize with a mixture of dread and longing I cannot shake that a piece of the camp, of Inara, of the lake, of the pulse, remains inside me, waiting, patient, knowing. I have never gone swimming since, not in pools, not in lakes, not even baths. Water is no longer just water. It carries a whisper beneath its surface, a promise, a pull, a lie. I still crave belonging, though I fear it, though I try to resist. Sometimes I feel the reflection flicker, perfectly timed with my thoughts, a reminder that the camp watches, waits, and remembers. And in mirrors, just for the briefest heartbeat, I see her smile instead of mine. Would you see it too, if you dared to look? Would you let it pull you under, or would you run? And if you ran, could you ever truly escape the hum? I should have gone home that evening. That thought has circled inside my head for years, whispering at odd hours like a voice half-remembered. I should have turned the key in my car, driven away from the lot, and never looked back. But something, curiosity, instinct, maybe even fate, made me linger, and because of that, my life has never returned to what it once was. It was July of 1983, my second summer as a ranger at Yellowstone National Park, and the day had unfolded, with its usual rhythm. Tourists with disposable cameras, children dragging their feet on the trails, and the eternal hum of cicadas rising and falling like a tide. I was 23 then, still trying to prove myself in a world that underestimated me, a young woman among mostly older men, each one convinced the wilderness was theirs to master. I had learned to wear confidence like armor, though beneath it I was always watching, always wary, attuned to the forest in ways my colleagues dismissed as nerves. That evening, the air was heavy with the sweetness of pine and the faint acrid tang of distant wildfire smoke. The horizon burned in streaks of violet and orange as I locked up the station and made my way to the parking lot. I remember the heat clinging to the asphalt, the cicadas fading into a hush as though something had hushed them. That was when I heard the engine, a rattling, uneven growl that belonged to a vehicle long past its prime. A battered pickup rolled into the lot, its paint sun-peeled to a dull, patchy red. It coughed once before dying, and from the cab stepped a man. Thin, pale, his frame bent under the weight of a massive backpack slung carelessly over his shoulder. He was maybe in his late 30s, though the wild beard covering half his face made him look older, rougher. His clothes, canvas shirt, faded jeans, boots with frayed laces, looked chosen for endurance, not appearance. He raised his hand in a hesitant wave, his motion jerky as if he hadn't spoken with another person in weeks. I should have waved back and left. Instead, I stayed frozen a moment, caught by something strange in his posture, in the urgency stitched into the way he adjusted his pack straps and turned toward the trailhead. Most hikers arrived before dusk, eager to set up camp while light lingered. But this man, he didn't hesitate. He marched straight into the deepening shadows swallowed by the trees as the last of the sun slipped away. I stood there, one hand still gripping my keys, feeling a tug inside me I couldn't name. Something about him wasn't right. The forest itself seemed to exhale when he disappeared into it, a long, low sigh that raised the hairs along my arms. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Over coffee, I told Willie, a broad-shouldered ranger with a constant grin, about the stranger. Guy looked like he was carrying half a house on his back, I said. Showed up late, went straight for the trail. Willie leaned back, lips tugging into a knowing smirk. That'll be James Spencer, he said, botany professor. Comes around every few summers. Gets real excited about moss and roots, that kind of thing. Don't worry, he's harmless. Harmless. The word sat wrong in my stomach. Still, I let the subject drop. Who was I to question it? Professors came, professors went. The woods had room for all kinds. But days passed, and Spencer never returned. Normally, rangers caught glimpses of hikers at checkpoints or heard chatter from campers passing through. By July 28th, 6 days after I'd seen him, an unease had burrowed into me, sharp and insistent. Protocol said, wait. People wandered off trail all the time. But something deeper told me this wasn't routine. The forest felt heavier, muffled, as though it held a secret between its roots. When the search began, I volunteered immediately. 10 of us spread into the woods that first morning, the air thick with the hum of insects and the resinous bite of pine. We moved in pairs, calling his name into the green silence. Every sound echoed strangely, as if the trees weren't reflecting our voices but swallowing them. An hour in, we found his campsite. It perched unnervingly close to a cliff, the kind of spot no seasoned hiker would choose. His tent sagged, flapping in the light wind. A stove lay overturned beside it, food scattered, his pack half open as though rifled through in haste. No footprints, no sign of a struggle, just the eerie sense that he had stepped out for a moment and never returned. I crouched by the tent flap, brushing my fingers over the nylon, and felt a chill crawl up my spine. He left in a hurry, I murmured. Willie shrugged. Maybe he saw a bear. But even as he said it, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. That night back at camp, I dreamed of the man's face, or what I could remember of it. The beard obscured most of his features, but his eyes burned sharp in my memory. Not frightened, not angry, just hollow, as if he'd already left this world before stepping into the woods. The next day the scream came. We'd split into new groups, combing deeper ravines. I was with Willie when it cut through the air, long, high, tearing through the forest like fabric ripping apart. Not an animal, not anything I'd heard before. Human, yes, but ragged with a kind of despair I can't put into words. We froze, breath caught in our throats, then bolted toward the sound. Branches whipped my arms, roots caught my boots. By the time we stumbled into a clearing, silence had reclaimed everything. The stillness pressed hard, suffocating. No movement, no sign of struggle, just the whisper of leaves shifting as if someone had just passed through. Willie muttered, "Christ," under his breath. We never found the source of the scream. Over the next days, more searchers joined, volunteers, police, even Spencer's family. His wife, her face drawn with exhaustion, clutched the hands of two children who stared wide-eyed at the woods. I couldn't bear their gaze. Every night we returned empty-handed, and their hope thinned a little more. On the 5th day, the search was called. Officially, he was declared missing, presumed dead. I told myself to accept it, but the image of that flapping tent, that echoing scream, rooted itself in me. The forest had swallowed him whole, and I felt complicit, as if I'd watched the ground open and done nothing. Years slipped by. I stayed on at Yellowstone, my life shaped around patrols and maps, the endless dance of fire prevention and rescue calls. But Spencer lingered, a ghost trailing the edges of my thoughts. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, I heard that scream, again carried on the wind. Then came 2008. I was older, worn down, my retirement paperwork signed and waiting. The forest had grown familiar, almost gentle, though the unease never fully faded. One evening in late autumn, as the sky bruised with twilight, Edwin, a fresh-faced ranger who would replace me, pointed toward the tree line. "You see that?" he asked. A man staggered out of the woods, gaunt, hair matted, beard wild, his clothes torn to rags. His skin clung to bone, his eyes sunken and fever-bright. Yet I knew him. I knew him instantly. "Professor Spencer," I whispered, though my throat was tight, the name tasting like ash. I ran forward, heart pounding. "James? James Spencer?" He blinked at me, confusion rippling across his face. His lips cracked as he spoke, the words rasping as though unused for years. "They took me. I don't know where. But they sent me back." My blood turned to ice. We brought him inside, wrapped him in blankets, pressed food and water into his shaking hands. He ate like someone half remembering how. When I tried to question him, he stared past me, his voice a fractured echo. "They took me. I don't know where. I don't know." The police came, and one older officer who'd been there during the original search stood pale as he whispered, "It's really him." Spencer's family arrived days later. His wife, lined with decades of grief, collapsed into his arms. His children, grown now, strangers to him, stood at a distance, their eyes brimming with questions he couldn't answer. And then, as suddenly as he'd returned, he was gone again. Taken home, taken from the park, taken from me. Still, his words haunt me. They took me. I walk the forest paths in memory now, even though I no longer wear the ranger's badge. Sometimes the air shifts, heavy and watchful, and I hear the faint rustle of nylon, the flap of a tent too close to the edge. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear that scream tearing through the silence again. I don't know who they are. I don't know what the forest holds in its depths, but I do know this. Not everyone who enters these woods comes back whole. Some don't come back at all, and some return carrying pieces of something else inside them. So tell me, if it were you, would you dare to walk into those trees knowing you might not be the one who walks back out? I didn't just clean rooms, I felt them. That's the part of myself I never told anyone, the part I carried like a bruise under my ribs. Every space whispered something, and I couldn't help but hear it. A crisp bed could hum with the faint echo of an old argument, sheets still holding the static of words that had once been shouted in their folds. A discarded tissue could pulse with grief, the sorrow still damp and clinging even after the tear dried. Most days I could smooth it all out, erase the emotional stains with my hands, with bleach, with routine. It was part of why I lasted so long in housekeeping. I wasn't just tidying, I was silencing rooms. But that morning when I woke up in the staff dormitory with the Thai sun already glaring through slatted curtains, I felt something I couldn't scrub away. It wasn't sorrow, or anger, or loneliness. It was something that had no human shape at all. A scream, maybe. A scream that wasn't sound, but weight, lodged in the back of my skull before I even left my bed. By the time I slipped into my uniform, tied back my hair, and pushed my cart into the hallway, The sensation had thickened. It drew me like a magnet to the second floor, to the left wing where most of the luxury suites perched. The other staff greeted me in passing, their chatter light, unaware of the static pressing against my skin. I smiled, nodded, pretended. But I was moving on rails inexorably toward it, toward room 247. The sign was still there. Do not disturb. 3 days in a row. The metal tag swayed slightly on its hook, though the air around it was still. My pulse climbed as I neared. The way it did when I passed a graveyard as a child, holding my breath so nothing unwanted could slip into me. The corridor was hushed. The kind of hush that wasn't absence but intent. I knew the others thought silence was natural here, away from the pool and bar. But to me it was heavy, a silence that leaned forward, watching. I stopped before the door, my palm hovering above, the wood. The cold sank into me without contact, numbing, almost wet. And under it all, a low thrumming. Not sound, not quite. More like a vibration inside my jaw, a pulse at the base of my skull, and woven through it the shape of a name, Molly. I jerked my hand back, my breath caught. The name wasn't mine. I didn't know a Molly. But it hummed inside me, filling the hollows of my ribs. I should have left. I should have gone downstairs, told the front desk the sign had been there too long, let management handle it. But I wasn't free anymore. The cold, the hum, the name, they weren't outside me. They were in me. I knocked softly, voice low. Housekeeping. No answer. I tried again, louder. Housekeeping, I'm coming in. The door gave under the slightest pressure, unlocked. Not pushed fully shut, as though it had been waiting. I stepped inside. Darkness smothered me. The curtains were clamped tight, seams of light at the edges like veins barely holding back blood. The air was damp, thick, so saturated it felt like walking into someone else's breath. My first inhale carried the metallic bite of copper, sharp enough to sting my tongue. Hello? Sir? Ma'am? My words wavered, small, swallowed by the walls. The bed was unmade, its sheets wound like ropes. 2 pillows sprawled on the floor, their cases smeared faintly darker, as though stained. A pair of sneakers lay near the doorway, untied, angled, in opposite directions as if the wearer had fled mid-stride. On the table, 2 glasses, amber residue pooled at their bottoms, flies skimming the surface. Chaos, yes, but not the natural chaos of life. It was 2-staged, not lived in, not abandoned, but suspended. Like the room itself was holding its breath. The thrumming in my head sharpened, dragging me toward the bathroom door. Closed, silent. But the air leaked out from the gap beneath it. Colder, wetter, carrying with it the stink of iron and something sweeter. Spoiled. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. Cold crawled up my skin, clamping my fingers into place. I didn't twist. The handle twisted me. The door swung open. The bathtub gleamed faintly in the dimness. Porcelain slick with water so still it looked solid, except it wasn't clear. It was tinged, a swirling maroon, dark strands spiraling slowly in lazy circles as if stirred by an unseen hand. And over the lip of the tub, a girl's head tilted sideways. Molly. I didn't know how I knew, but the name pressed into me as if branded. Her hair was dark, soaked, fanning down in ribbons. Her skin was pale, waxen, and every inch of it too still. Bruises mottled her throat like fingerprints, her arms like restraints. But it wasn't the marks that rooted me in place. It was her expression. Her lips were parted in something that could almost be called a smile. Not soft, not human. The corners of her mouth hooked upward just enough to unnerve. A grin with no warmth behind it. Her half-open eyes glistened in the shadows, and though logic told me they were glassy in death, they moved. Just slightly. Following me. The hum in my skull thundered now, each pulse carrying the name harder. Molly, Molly, Molly. I clutched my stomach, nausea rising. The air pressed against me, thick as hands. My tongue burned metallic. Copper flooded my mouth, and when I gagged, I tasted it. Blood, though my lips had never touched the water. I staggered back, my heel slipping on tile slicker than it should have been. I caught myself against the doorframe, my breath clawing, in and out. Her smile widened, or maybe the shadows shifted. Either way, I felt the promise in it. Not a plea, not a cry for help, a claim. The hum was deafening now, reverberating through the walls, the floor, my bones. It wasn't a room anymore, it was a throat, and I was standing inside its scream. Help! I tried to shout, but the sound cracked, half swallowed. My voice wasn't mine, it was part of the hum. The walls pressed closer. The carpet beyond the bathroom threshold snagged at my shoes, fibers clutching like fingers. The hallway outside stretched away in my mind, impossibly long, a tunnel I'd never escape. I bolted. I don't remember deciding to move. Just that 1 second I was rooted in that awful bathroom, and the next I was slamming into the corridor, the word tearing out of me raw. Help! This time it carried, echoed, split the silence like shattering glass. A guard appeared at the far end, heavy steps pounding. Relief should have come, but it didn't. The hum followed me, vibrating under the soles of my shoes, whispering through the air vents. The guard caught my arm. His bulk steadied me, his voice a question I barely heard. What's going on? I pointed, unable to form words. My throat ached with copper. He went inside. I stayed out. The moment his shoe crossed the threshold, he flinched as though slapped. His shoulders stiffened. His breath shuddered, but he kept moving. Braver or more oblivious than me. Seconds later, a strangled curse echoed back. Jesus Christ. He stumbled out, color drained from his face, eyes wide but unfocused. He fumbled for his radio, voice shaking. We've got a situation in 247, call the police now. But he didn't say what he saw. Not the girl, not the tub. His gaze never met mine, but his hands trembled as though something still clung to them, invisible. I wrapped my arms around myself, rocking faintly, the hum still clawing inside my chest. I wanted to believe it would stop when the police came. That once they swarmed the room, gloves and cameras and tape, the wrongness would be boxed up, sealed away. But I knew. The moment I saw her, I knew. He didn't kill her. He tried. He failed. And she was still here. They took me outside while the sirens came. The heat of Thailand pressed against my skin, but it didn't warm me. The chill of room 247 had soaked, too deep, and no sunlight could burn it out. Guests gathered in clumps near the pool, drawn by curiosity, their bright swimsuits and cocktails grotesquely out of place against the crime scene unfolding above them. I watched their mouths move, their laughter muted as if I were underwater. The hum was still inside me, quiet but constant, like the world's faintest heartbeat, reminding me she wasn't gone. The police came fast, their uniforms crisp, their boots heavy on tile floors. They moved through the hall with practiced severity, roping off the door, sending staff scattering. Questions flew, clipped and efficient. I answered what I could, my words flat, brittle. I knew they were hearing a housekeeper who had stumbled upon a body. I wanted to scream that they were wrong, that it wasn't a body, not exactly, but I stayed silent. What could I say? That the corpse in the tub was smiling at me? That her eyes had followed me across the room? No. They would call me hysterical, say I'd been overwhelmed. And yet, when the security guard emerged again, his face still ashen, I saw it in his eyes. He knew. He couldn't name it, couldn't admit it. But something had brushed him too, and it had left its mark. By nightfall, the resort was swallowed in gossip. The girl's name reached me through whispers. Molly, 25. A tourist from the States, here with her boyfriend Mason. A fight the night before. A disappearance. And now this. But I didn't learn the truth until later, after Mason was caught. They arrested him at the airport trying to leave the country. I expected him to look broken, guilty. But when I glimpsed his photograph on the evening news, I saw something colder. His face wasn't twisted in grief or rage. It was hollow. His eyes fixed on some distant point, his mouth drawn tight like a man who had lost a battle no one else could see. The reports called it murder. They spoke of bruises, blunt force trauma, a jealous rage sparked by texts with an X. But buried in their words was a detail that froze me. The police said his confession was incoherent. He claimed he hadn't wanted to kill her, not really. He'd been trying to stop it. Those words locked into me, because that was the truth I had already felt. He hadn't killed Molly. He had failed to. The resort tried to move on. They sealed off room 247, draped it in tape, reassigned the wing. Staff avoided that corridor. Guests whispered about it by the pool, half thrilled, half horrified. I kept working. Towels, sheets, bottles, tissues. My body moved, but my mind stayed caught in that bathroom. The hum grew worse at night. When I lay in my narrow dorm bed, it reverberated against the metal springs, rattled through my jaw. Sometimes I swore I heard my name buried in it. Sometimes I woke choking on the taste of copper, my tongue slick as though I'd drunk from the tub. And sometimes I dreamed. In the dreams, I was back in 247 standing over her. Molly's smile widened, her bruises darkened, her hand twitched, in the water as though about to rise. And her voice, never her lips, never her throat, but her voice, unfurled in my head. You feel them. You can feel me. I woke screaming more than once, drenched in sweat, my roommate staring. I laughed it off, claimed nightmares, stress. They didn't need to know that my ability, the one I had buried for years, had finally been turned against me. Weeks passed, but the residue of her remained. When I pushed my cart past that wing, even on the opposite side of the hall, I felt her. Curtains whispering, though no breeze stirred. A chill clinging to the wallpaper. My chest tightening until I had to hurry away, pretending not to notice. Police wrapped up their case quickly. Mason was extradited, charged, locked away. But the story never sat right in my head. The words he'd spoken lingered. I tried to stop it. Stop what? One evening after my shift, I lingered near the taped door. The hall was quiet, emptied of guests. My skin prickled with the wrongness pressing against the wood. And then faintly I heard it. Not the hum. A whisper. Come in. My breath stilled. The voice wasn't outside me. It bloomed inside my skull, low and sweet like honey dripping over glass. I pressed my palm against the tape, the door cold enough to burn. My knees weakened. I wanted to flee, but I couldn't. The voice was her smile, her eyes, her water. You feel me. Don't run. I staggered back, heart hammering. I ran then, bolted down the hall, not daring to look back. But that night, I knew it wasn't the room she was bound to. It was me. Strange things began to happen. Small at first. Sheets I folded in other rooms would sometimes smell faintly of iron. Mirrors fogged, though no showers had been run. Once, while changing linens, I looked up and saw her reflection behind me, her wet hair trailing, her smile curled sharp. Though when I spun around, the room was empty. My coworkers noticed my shaking hands, my growing silences. I lied, said I was tired, sick, but inside the dread grew claws. And then, one afternoon, I heard a guest call my name down the hall. I turned, expecting a coworker. No one was there, but the whisper lingered in the air, stretched like silk. You'll do. I stopped sleeping. Food turned metallic on my tongue. Every room I entered vibrated faintly with echoes, but it was no longer other people's residue I felt. It was hers, bleeding through, tainting everything. I searched her name in old records, desperate for anything. Molly, 25, a photographer, from Seattle. I stared at her smiling pictures, her bright eyes, her carefree grin. A different smile from the one in the tub. That one was human. The one I saw was something else. and the boyfriend's words rang louder. I tried to stop it. He, though, hadn't been lying. He had tried to stop her, not from dying, from becoming. The climax came weeks later. I woke in the dorm, the hum louder than ever, vibrating my teeth. My body moved without choice, carrying me down the hall, down the stairs, toward 247. The tape fluttered though no one touched it. My hand reached for the knob on its own. The door opened. The room was darker than memory, its air thicker, sweeter, rancid. The tub glistened faintly in the shadows, and there she was, still, smiling, waiting. But this time her head lifted, water cascaded down her hair, pattering onto tile, though the tub never rippled. Her eyes fixed on mine, gleaming, alive, and her voice filled me. You feel them. You feel me. You can't leave me here. My knees buckled. The taste of copper flooded me. I gagged, choking, my lungs burning as though filled with water. My hands clawed at my throat, but it wasn't air I lacked, it was self. She was inside me, threading through me, curling like smoke in my chest. You'll do. Her hand twitched, then lifted, dripping, reaching. Not at me, but into me. The hum became a roar, shaking my bones, pressing my vision black at the edges. I screamed, not for help, not for anyone, but to break her, to tear her out of me. The walls rippled. The carpet writhed underfoot. The air clamped down thick as a fist. I collapsed, thrashing, my scream breaking glass in my own skull. And then, silence. I woke in the hallway. Staff gathered around, their faces pale, voices frantic. They said they'd found me unconscious, the tape torn, the door ajar. They asked why I'd gone inside. I said nothing. What could I say? That Molly had chosen me? That she was already crawling into me like a parasite into a host? No. Some truths have no words. I still work here. I walk the halls, clean the rooms, smile at guests. But I'm not the same. Every pillow I fluff, every sheet I tuck, carries not just the residue of human lives, but the pull of something darker. Molly's presence lingers in me like a second pulse, faint but insistent. And sometimes, in the quiet, I feel her smile stretch inside me. The world wasn't just made of people and their lives. It was also made of what they left behind. And sometimes, what they left behind was still looking for someone to take their place. I was recovering from the brutal sunlight that had hit me straight in the face after 5 hours on the beach. My vision was plagued by dark patches and bright figures floating about, remnants of staring at the blinding reflection of the ocean's waves. Yet, despite the discomfort, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. The golden tan on my skin was a testament to the relaxation I had sought, now etched into my very appearance. It was my second day in Cancun, and the resort I had chosen for this vacation was nothing short of paradise, a dreamlike escape from the monotony of everyday life. The resort itself was an architectural marvel, blending seamlessly with its surroundings. At the entrance, beautifully carved wooden beams greeted guests, while the soft murmur of ocean waves in the background created an ambiance that was both luxurious and serene. The salty breeze carried with it a promise of endless leisure. I stood at the front desk, waiting to retrieve my room key while soaking in the vibrant energy that seemed to pulse through the air. The receptionist, a plump man with a scraggly beard and a contagious smile, worked diligently to attend to the line of eager travelers. "One moment, please," he said, his voice warm and inviting. As his fingers drummed rhythmically on the counter, I found myself lulled into a peculiar trance. The steady tapping combined with the distant crash of waves created a hypnotic melody that momentarily transported me away. "Stephanie?" he called out, snapping me back to reality. I nodded quickly, my cheeks warming as I realized I'd been lost in thought. His smile widened as he retrieved a small, neatly wrapped package along with my room key. I thanked him and clutched my belongings, excitement bubbling within me. This trip was meant to be a celebration of my hard work, a reward for the endless hours I'd spent immersed in the grind. Here I planned to unwind, let loose and revel in the luxury of doing absolutely nothing. After a long, hot shower, I slipped into a comfortable dress and prepared to head out for an evening of exploring the resort's many amenities. However, just as I reached for my sandals, there was a sudden knock at the door. The sound startled me, echoing unnervingly in the otherwise quiet room. Frowning, I approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice slightly trembling. "It's Felix," came the reply. The name didn't ring a bell and my confusion deepened. Before I could respond, he added, "You forgot something." A cold unease washed over me. I mentally retraced my steps, but nothing seemed to be missing. "I think you have the wrong room," I called back. Silence followed for a moment before his voice cut through again, more assertively this time. "I'm coming in." My heart dropped as the handle began to turn. Panic surged through me. Before I could react, the door swung open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried an air of menace that was impossible to ignore. My breath hitched as I took a step back, clutching my towel tighter around me. "What are you doing?" I demanded, trying to mask the fear in my voice with anger. His response was a smile, a twisted, unsettling grin that sent chills down my spine. He closed the door behind him with a deliberate motion, his eyes scanning the room like a predator sizing up its prey. I felt the walls close in around me, the spacious suite suddenly shrinking under the weight of his presence. "Stay quiet and cooperate," he said, his voice low but laden with threat. Slowly, he reached into his pocket, and when his hand emerged, it was holding a razor-sharp knife. The blade caught the dim light, gleaming ominously. "You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be." My pulse thundered in my ears as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This man was here to hurt me. I took a cautious step backward, my mind racing for a way out. "Please," I said, my voice trembling. "You don't have to do this." His smirk widened and he took a step closer. "Let me tell you how this is going to go," he began, twirling the knife in his hand with a disturbing ease. "If you behave, you'll walk away, but if you don't..." He paused, letting the blade hover menacingly between us. "Let's just say the fish in the ocean are going to have a feast tonight." Every muscle in my body screamed for me to run, but fear rooted me to the spot. He inched closer, his footsteps heavy against the tiled floor. Desperation clawed at me as I scanned the room for anything I could use to defend myself. My eyes darted to the bathroom door. It was my only chance. Without thinking, I turned and bolted toward the bathroom, adrenaline propelling me forward. He was fast, but fear made me faster. Just as I reached the door, I felt a sharp sting in my arm. Pain shot through me as I realized he had managed to graze me with the knife. Blood trickled down my arm, but I didn't stop. I slammed the bathroom door shut and threw my weight against it, locking it in place. He was on the other side in an instant, pounding against the door with a ferocity that made it tremble on its hinges. "You're only making this worse for yourself," he yelled, his voice filled with frustration. I sobbed, my hands trembling as I pressed against the door with all my strength. "Help! Somebody, please!" I screamed, my voice raw with terror. The walls of the bathroom seemed to close in on me, the space becoming suffocatingly small. I glanced around, searching for anything I could use to barricade the door or defend myself, but the sterile room offered no salvation. My eyes fell on the bathtub, and a horrifying image flashed through my mind. My lifeless body lying there, blood pooling around me. His pounding grew louder, more determined. The door rattled violently, and I knew it wouldn't hold much longer. My thoughts spiraled into despair. Would this be how it ended? In a foreign hotel room, far from home, at the hands of a stranger? Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, a desperate prayer. And then the pounding stopped. For a moment there was silence, heavy and foreboding. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear. Had he given up? Or was he planning something worse? Suddenly the door shuddered as he threw his full weight against it. The impact reverberated through the room, and I knew I couldn't hold it much longer. Panic overtook me, and in a split-second decision I yanked the door open just as he lunged forward. The timing was pure instinct, and it saved my life. He stumbled, his momentum carrying him forward uncontrollably. He crashed head first into the ceramic edge of the bathtub with a sickening crack. His body crumpled to the floor, motionless. I stood frozen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The room was eerily silent except for the pounding of my heart. Slowly, I approached him, my legs trembling beneath me. Blood pooled around his head, and his neck was bent at an unnatural angle. He wasn't moving. It took a moment for the reality to sink in. He was dead. Relief and horror washed over me in equal measure. I stumbled out of the bathroom, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone. Another guest in the hallway must have heard the commotion because help arrived within minutes. The police were called, and I recounted the harrowing ordeal in painstaking detail. In the days that followed, the authorities confirmed my account. His knife bore only his fingerprints, and the evidence clearly pointed to self-defense. I was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the emotional scars remained. My dream vacation had turned into a nightmare, and all I wanted was to return home and forget. Even now, as I sit here reflecting on that day, I am acutely aware of how close I came to losing everything. Life is fragile, and sometimes it takes a moment of sheer terror to truly appreciate its value. I am grateful to be alive, but the memory of that man and his sinister smile will haunt me forever. Hello, my name is Trick. I am a Bosnian immigrant, and I have been living in the United States for the past 13 years. However, the story I want to tell you happened in my hometown, Shanita, in Bosnia. Back then, my dad and I had a cherished tradition. We would go fishing on the Drina River every weekend. It was a ritual that brought us closer, spending hours in our small boat, struggling to catch the biggest fish we could. My dad had a deep love for fishing, just like my grandfather before him, and for me, those outings were a source of immense joy, a chance to bond with my father in a way that felt timeless. Looking back, I often think about how those simple fishing trips encapsulated so much of my childhood happiness. The crisp morning air, the glistening river, and my dad's infectious enthusiasm made it all magical. I never imagined that those idyllic outings would lead to the most harrowing experience of my life, something that would haunt me to this day. Over the years, I'd heard strange stories about the Drina River. The villagers often spoke of mysterious events and whispered about the folklore surrounding its waters. My grandfather, a seasoned fisherman himself, used to warn me in his gravelly voice, "Be careful, son. The Drina River is a dangerous place. It's not just fish that lurk below." As a child, I dismissed his words as nothing more than tales meant to frighten or entertain. But one fateful afternoon, I learned how wrong I was. It was a day like no other. The wind was strong, and although my dad wasn't feeling well, he insisted that a day on the river would do him good. The sky had begun to darken, and gray clouds loomed overhead. "Every good fisherman knows that rain brings good fish," my dad said with a reassuring smile as we prepared our gear. I wasn't entirely convinced, but I didn't want to disappoint him. So, we ventured out onto the river, our small boat slicing through the water as we headed to our favorite fishing spot. At first, everything seemed normal. We cast our rods, listening to the rhythmic sound of raindrops hitting the surface of the water. But something felt off. The river was unusually calm despite the rain. It was as if the water itself was holding its breath. I tried to brush off the unease creeping up my spine, telling myself it was just my imagination. Time passed, and to our surprise, we hadn't caught a single fish. This was highly unusual. Even on a bad day, we always managed to catch something. Frustrated, I joked that maybe the river had finally run out of fish. My dad chuckled, about to reply, when suddenly something massive struck the underside of our boat. The impact was so powerful that it jolted us both, and the boat began to rock violently. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling. My dad's expression turned serious as he peered over the edge of the boat. "I don't know," he muttered. He told me to stay put while he investigated. I was terrified. The Drina River wasn't known for having dangerous creatures, but the uncertainty of what lay beneath filled me with dread. Before I could protest, the boat was struck again. even harder this time. The force threw me off balance and I tumbled into the icy water. The cold hit me like 1,000 needles, stealing the breath from my lungs. I heard my dad shouting my name as I struggled to stay afloat. The current wasn't particularly strong, but the freezing temperature made it difficult to move. As I swam toward the boat, I felt an unsettling movement in the water beneath me. Something massive was circling. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed myself to swim faster. I could see my dad's outstretched hand reaching for me, and I felt a glimmer of hope. But just as I was about to grab his hand, something cold and powerful wrapped around my chest, pulling me down. Panic consumed me as I was dragged deeper into the murky depths. I thrashed and kicked, trying to break free, but whatever had me was impossibly strong. As the light from the surface grew dimmer, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. A figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, or at least, something that resembled one. Her skin was pale and wrinkled, her hair a tangled mess that floated around her like seaweed. Her eyes were empty sockets, and her mouth opened in an unnatural grin, revealing jagged teeth. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like something out of a nightmare. The creature's skeletal hands gripped me tighter, and I felt an icy pain sear through my chest. Then, she spoke. Her voice was a haunting melody, clear and crisp despite being underwater. I couldn't understand the words, but they echoed in my mind, filling me with a sense of dread. Just as I thought I was going to drown, I felt another set of hands pulling me upward. It was my dad. Somehow he had dived in and managed to grab hold of me, yanking me toward the surface. I gasped for air as we broke through the water, coughing and sputtering. My dad's face was a mix of relief and fear as he dragged me back onto the boat. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaking. I nodded weakly, unable to speak. My chest burned where the creature had touched me, but I didn't dare look. My dad's focus shifted to the water, his eyes scanning for any sign of the thing that had attacked me. Before he could react, the boat was struck again, this time with enough force to tip it over. We were both thrown into the water. The last thing I saw before I went under was my dad's terrified expression. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. The cold enveloped me, and the silence was deafening. I tried to call out, but no sound came. Then, I saw her again. The creature was floating in the distance, her hollow eyes fixed on me. I felt a surge of terror as she began to move closer. But before she could reach me, something changed. The current seemed to shift, pulling her away. Her expression twisted into one of rage as she disappeared into the depths. Moments later, I was pulled to the surface by a group of fishermen who had heard our cries for help. They managed to get me back to shore, but my dad was nowhere to be found. For weeks I was bedridden, recovering from the ordeal. The mark on my chest where the creature had touched me never faded. It was a constant reminder of what had happened. 6 months later, my dad's body was found washed up on the riverbank. The authorities ruled it as a drowning, but I knew better. He had been taken by the same thing that had almost claimed me. After my dad's funeral, my family decided to leave Bosnia and start anew in the United States. But no matter how far I've come, the memories of that day haunt me. The mark on my chest is a permanent scar, both physical and emotional, and a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the unknown depths of the Drina River. The Drina River was where I learned the true meaning of peace. Every weekend, like clockwork, my father and I would set out early in the morning, the air still cool and crisp with the remnants of night. The sun would barely kiss the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across the water's surface. Our boat was small, just big enough for the two of us. As the engine hummed, my father would grip the oars with a weathered, calloused hand, his face set in quiet concentration. He had been fishing these waters his entire life, learning the tricks of the trade from his father, my grandfather, who had passed down the love of the river to him, and in turn, to me. "Every good fisherman knows," my dad would say with a wry grin, "the river gives what it wants and it takes what it wants." I always took his words to heart, believing that the Drina was nothing more than a peaceful, reliable place. But that belief shattered on a day that would change my life forever. It started like any other trip. My father wasn't feeling great, but he insisted that a day on the water would lift his spirits. A little fishing, a little fresh air, and the fish will come. You'll see. His voice was weak but full of optimism. I could tell he wasn't at his best, but he smiled at me in that familiar, reassuring way that always made me feel safe. The sky, however, had a different story to tell. Dark clouds rolled in slowly, blanketing the sunlight, and a chill wind began to blow across the river. I noticed it, but my father didn't seem to mind. He just nodded toward the water, humming a tune as he prepared the fishing rods. "Rain brings good fish," he said with a twinkle in his eye. I didn't share his confidence, but I didn't want to disappoint him either, so I kept quiet and helped him set up. We had been out for hours with little to show for it. The river, usually teeming with life, felt strangely still. There was no tug on the lines, no ripples disturbing the water, just the sound of the occasional raindrop splashing against the surface. My father looked up at the sky, his brow furrowed. "It's not right," he muttered, casting his line out one more time. "The river's not giving today." I nodded in agreement but didn't speak. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel something creeping into the atmosphere, a presence that I couldn't explain. The calm before a storm, perhaps, but there was something more to it, something in the way the water seemed too quiet, too controlled. Suddenly, the boat jolted violently, a powerful force slamming against the underside. My heart jumped into my throat as I scrambled to keep my balance. My father, startled, gripped the edge of the boat, his eyes wide. "What was that?" "What?" I asked, my voice trembling with unease. "I don't know," he muttered, scanning the water. His voice had lost its usual calm confidence. "Stay still, Trick." Before I could protest, the boat was struck again, this time with such force that I was thrown off my feet. My stomach lurched as the boat rocked wildly and the water splashed up, drenching me in seconds. I barely had time to react before I was hurled into the icy river. The water was shockingly cold, its grip immediate and suffocating. I gasped for breath, but the chill stole the air from my lungs. I struggled, limbs flailing, as the current tugged at me, dragging me away from the boat. I heard my father shouting my name, his voice distant as I fought to stay afloat. "Trick," he called. "Don't panic, son. I'm coming for you." I could see his hand reaching out to me, his face a mask of fear and determination. But something in the water caught my attention, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was like the water itself was alive. I felt the current shift beneath me, something massive swirling in the depths. The sensation was overwhelming, an oppressive pressure as if the river was trying to pull me down into its abyss. I kicked harder, swimming toward my father, but the water seemed to fight me, slowing me down, pulling at my every movement. I could hear my father's frantic voice, but it was muffled by the rushing water, like the river itself was swallowing his words. Then, just as I was almost within reach of him, something cold and unyielding wrapped around my chest. I gasped, my heart pounding in my ears as the grip tightened, dragging me deeper into the murky depths. Panic surged through me as I fought to break free, kicking and thrashing, but whatever had me was impossibly strong. I glanced downward, and that's when I saw it, the creature. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were telling me. There, in the depths of the river, a figure emerged from the shadows, pale, wrinkled, skin stretched taut over a skeletal frame. Her hair, tangled and long, floated around her like seaweed. Her eyes were empty sockets, black as night, and her mouth opened into an unnatural grin, revealing jagged, razor-sharp teeth. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything except stare as this nightmarish figure moved toward me with terrifying slowness, her skeletal hands tightening around my chest, sending a searing pain through my body. Her voice, though, was the worst of it. It was a melody, a haunting, twisted song that echoed in my mind, even though her lips didn't move. The sound seeped into my very soul, filling me with an unexplainable dread. The words were foreign, but the meaning was clear. You belong to the river now. Just as the darkness began to overtake me, I felt a surge of movement, a pull that yanked me upward. My father, His hands were on me, pulling me through the water with a strength I didn't know he had. "Grab hold," he shouted, his voice desperate as he yanked me toward the surface. I broke through the water, gasping for air, my chest burning from the cold, my body shaking. My father's face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but there was relief in his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice shaking as he pulled me into the boat. I nodded weakly, but I couldn't speak. The mark where the creature's fingers had gripped me was burning, searing with an icy fire that made me want to scream. But I didn't. I couldn't. My father looked at me, his expression filled with fear. "We need to leave, Trick. Now." But before we could move, the boat was struck again. The impact was so violent that the boat capsized. My father's terrified scream echoed in my ears as we were both thrown into the water once again. I could see him reaching for me, his eyes wide with fear, but before I could grab his hand, the darkness consumed me. The last thing I saw was the creature's hollow eyes staring into mine, and then everything went black. I don't know how much time passed before I was pulled from the water by a group of fishermen who had heard our cries for help. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the shore, the warmth of the sun already beginning to return. But my father was gone. The river had claimed him, just as it had nearly claimed me. For weeks I lay in bed recovering from the trauma, but the mark on my chest never faded. It remained there, a permanent reminder of the creature that had nearly taken me into the depths. And 6 months later, my father's body was found on the riverbank, lifeless and cold. The authorities called it a drowning, but I knew the truth. The river had taken him, and it had left me with nothing but the scars, physical and emotional, to remind me of that fateful day. We left Bosnia soon after. My family thought starting anew in the United States would help me heal, but the memories of that day still haunt me. The mark on my chest is more than just a physical scar. It is a reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of the Drina River, a place where even the most peaceful moments can turn into a living nightmare. And I know deep down that whatever lives in those waters is still watching, waiting for its next victim.